I have to recommend some of the newest modules on the market. Lately, what's been very popular is Old School Essentials, and for a good reason. Not just for the build quality of the books themselves, but for the actual layout and design and clarification of the rules. So Old School Essential modules do a fantastic job in helping an inexperienced DM prepare to run those adventures. Yes, I did say experienced. Hello, welcome back to the Three Orcs channel. Today, I want to talk about what it takes to prepare the historical and famous T1 module, the Village of Hommlet. That module is tough for a careless DM to pull off. You have over 100 NPCs, locations, organizations, the Hommlet Council, the Tower with Byrne and Rufus, the Druid at the Druid Grove, also potential henchmen and enemy spies. That is a lot to handle, especially for a new DM.
That sounds hard. Maybe 3 orcs stronger.
Most DMs, in my experience over the last 40 years, will just run the module from the pages. We'll read the player's background for the players and just have the party arrive at the Inn of the Welcome Wench. Then roll for rumors on the rumors table and just call it a day. Then they send their party tromping off through the fens to find the moat house. There's many kinds of DMs that give a lot of different advice. And all these DMs have different backgrounds. They learn the game differently, and so they present it a little bit. They have different and varied opinions on Dungeons and Dragons. Often you'll hear them spout advice just to wing it, or do not over-prepare. That is the most common piece of advice that are given to new Dungeon Masters. Don't over-prepare. Well, what I gotta say, and by default, and what also a Gygax had to say, in the T1 module, the T1 through 4 Temple of Elemental Evil module itself, on page 5, there's a section called Notes for the Dungeon Master. Gygax specifically stated in the module the following: if you are so thoroughly familiar with the module that you can simply glance at the name of the encounter area, then put everything in your own words, so much the better. You should be conservative with the whole before beginning play. Your players will, in turn, reflect and be inspired by your skill in presenting the material herein. The whole is quite general, in fact, and while some characteristics of the non-player characters are given, there's sufficient latitude for you to completely personalize the adventure to fit your style of play and satisfy your players. Follow the guidelines given, but round them out to make each unique encounter. So at this point, I know what some of those DMs are thinking. They can just read the module and wing it. No problem. But these same DMs prepare too little and end up with a game that seems artificial, flat, and boring. Not only do I think that the advice, don't over-prepare, is not very helpful, I think it's bad advice and it can potentially harm new DMs trying to run the game. Now, let's talk about details on how to prepare for this adventure. It's going to be quite a bit. Even though this module is made for beginner DMs, there's a lot of information in the module, some advice how to prepare for this adventure. And the first thing I do, of course, is look at the map. And so this is the original map of the Village of Hommlet from the module, and you can see that its detail is lacking, but all the locations are clearly defined and they're all numbered. All you gotta do is look up the location number in the module and read all about it. But unfortunately, the layout of the module is scattered. There's information all over the place. Not only you have information at the beginning, but you have information on each location where that character is at. Also, you have more information at different locations. I'll show you that as part of this preparation. Then we got different maps you can use. You can use the original map from the module, but to give you further inspiration, sometimes it's useful or helpful to look at other maps that other artists have created or different versions of this module. So this is a beautiful one in kind of an original art style of D&D. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Judges Guild material from back in the late 70s. I like this map a lot. And here's another map that I use. I don't know who the artist is, but I put this into World Anvil and I use it as an interactive location map. Okay, so one of the things I do, I go pretty far. I'll take a module, and not only will I broaden the scope of the module and flush out the dungeon, the NPCs, the monsters, the area around the dungeon, but I actually rewrite the entire module and put it into a World Anvil in my own words with my own formatting. So it makes that information much more accessible during the game. And here's my site. This is World Anvil, the page you see right here. And the very top graph I have for the banner is one of the original line art illustrations for the village of Hommlet, which is in the original module. This is a view of looking down the street into the village, and at the end of the street, past all the farms, is the Inn of the Welcome Wench. And below that, I have an interactive map using the map that I like of the village of Hommlet, because I can scroll around here and I can click on every location and bring up that article. For me, this is faster. This is much more accessible. So if I have to go across the street and click on that location to see what's there and who's there, it's a lot easier to do here than it is flipping through the pages trying to figure out what's across the street, because you're not going to read that in the descriptions. You're going to have to refer to the map, location number, back to the map, location number again, just going back and forth, trying to zero in on what you know, what's in the next 2 buildings to your left and right and across the street. Because players, they role play that way. They say, yeah, we cross the street, we're going to go to that place, or we're going to go talk to them, or maybe there's dogs out front and they're growling at them, they're guarding the bank loan guy. So things like that, or the big church, or the hammer hitting the anvil in the smithy right across the way. It's nice to be able to have this information ready to go when you're running this game. It makes it much more engaging. It brings the world to life when you can add more detail like that. Not just the location they're at, but in a sense of smell or what you can hear of locations next door. On this map, I can zoom in as far as I want to get the detail I need. And this is not even the full map size. If I click here, I can bring up the full map there. So it takes up the whole screen. So I can zoom in all the way to the castle site, for example. And there it is. That's where Rufus and Burn is located. I can go to the Druid's Grove. So if the players decide to visit the Druid, I got some graphics to help lend to the description of the area, which helps a lot. The trees and the buildings and the style. That helps. There's gates and things like that. And there's the stream. And it does show elevation gain. The Brewmaster is up on the hillock overlooking the stream and the village, and it looks like the chapel of St. Cuthbert is on a hill overlooking the village as well. And I don't even know what this place is across the way. See, this is a good example. What is that hut? If the players are going to the church, if the players are going to the chapel of St. Cuthbert and talking to Canon Turgeon because they got rumors from the innkeeper about the bandits, they're going to probably ask, hey, what's that hut across the street? And you're going to looking through this, you're going to be flipping through this module looking for this information, and it's going to be tough. It's going to pause the game, and it's going to be awkward, and it's going to mess with your pace and timing. But here, I put my mouse over it, and it says 19. It's a modest cottage. So I know it's a cottage. I can describe it instantly. And then it's owned by Black Jay, and he's a herdsman. That's right. So you got to remember some of this stuff too. You got to kind of memorize some of these NPCs. So when you see these little added descriptors, it could jog your memory. Go, oh yeah, Black Jay, he's the herdsman. He lost some sheep or something. So if I click on the location, it brings up the article on the left, or I can do full page, and it tells me the history, his location, It describes him, his armor, his weapons, his magic items, his treasure, all that stuff. And sometimes I'll add like a plot point link, so that way I can go to that article and follow up on that quest. So let's go back to the map again. And so the players, when you first start on session 1, they're going to be probably coming from the city of Verbabank, up the street right here, or this street right here. And they're going to be coming up to the Inn of the Welcome Wench on the left. But it depends. But we'll go over that with the overhead map. So back to the original article. On the right, I have the map of the outside of the Viscounty of Verbabank. So here's the village of Hommlet right here. And there's the moat house next door with the fens, the swamp. And then there's the Knives Run, which the merchant road runs parallel to from the north all the way up to the city of Verbabank. So when you first start the game, you can have them either traveling to the Hommlet from Verbabank, from the north, or the module even suggests that you could have the players come from maybe the Wild Coast, and they travel through the gnarly forest to Hommlet. But to do that, they'd have to get through Nulb. So if you want to try to bypass any preliminary information the players might have about Nulb, you could say, well, they didn't stop there, that they are traveling from the gnarly forest to Hommlet all in one trip, and they just rode through, and they didn't notice anything quite obvious of the kind of people that lived there in Nulb. So you can get away with that if you wanted to. All right, so below I have a description. So this is the in the module, it describes the adventure. So I wrote that out here, but this is not what I read the players. I just put a lot of artwork here to place it so I know what to show the players. So when I'm describing why they're going on this adventure, or during the adventure, or when they arrive at the village of Hommlet, I got artwork to show them. So I got this really beautiful, realistic picture of what it looks like in the village of Hommlet. Because in that photo, you see on the right is the tower of Byrne and Rufus. And on the left, up on the hill, is the chapel of St. Cuthbert. And then I can't really point out where the Inn of the Welcome Wench is. The picture's not that big. And then we have on the right, I just added the original cover of the module. And then below, I have the history for my notes. Yes, it's in the module, but in here, I can copy paste and do things with it. Like I can send it to a player if I'm playing this online. And on the right is just more pictures and artwork and population levels, and now the locations. So I can click on any of these links on the right, and they'll take me to those locations too, either as a pop-up or just take me to that article. So this information is instantly at my fingertips. This helps me prepare for the adventure. So when the players decide to go to location 15, it's a sturdy new building. Well, that's interesting. Then there's a sign hanging from the front door of a money changer. And I believe that location tells you what that sign looks like. But at least I know, just from glancing at that link, that I know what that location is. And if I put my mouse over it, it'll give me the first couple paragraphs of that article. So I can actually kind of refer to it quickly. Or I can click on it and get the whole article ready if the players decide to actually go to that location and interact with it. So that's one way I prepare for my games. If I didn't have, if I didn't have World Anvil, like in the old days, you'd just take notes. You would use some sort of computer program to take your notes or organize your notes, or on paper like Professor Dungeon Master does, or you can just write notes all over the original module, but then it'll ruin the value of that module because they're so rare these days that they hold high value. Okay, I want to show you one of the maps of the outdoors, because when you first start this campaign, you have to prepare how you're going to start it. And looking at the local map, this map is not very detailed. I don't remember where I got it from. I think it's from one of the modules. And but it does show the two locations of Nolb and Hommlet in regards to each other. It shows the low road and the high road, which is really important in this campaign later on when they have to go to Nolb and they continue with the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign. There's different ways to take notes. I mentioned about taking notes with some word program, but I actually created articles in World Anvil to help me run my campaign. And one of the things I wrote was the arrival of the village of Hommlet. How to roleplay the encounter, how to run the adventure, how to start it. Starting with the journey to the village of Hommlet. Now, the module itself does suggest a few things that can happen on the journey to the Hommlet and why the party is there. One of them is being attacked by bandits. Of course, a new module has been released by Goodman Games, which is a 5e version, but the box set has all the versions in it. And one such module by Goodman Games, the Temple of Elemental Evil, is a 5e version, but it does have all the versions in it. And it has a lot more artwork and descriptions of the modules, so I think it's very valuable. Even though I don't run 5e, I still find it very handy to have that information to supplement running my game with my material. Another module I suggest that you should check out that has not been released yet, and the only way to get it right now is being a Patreon of Scott Gnu. He wrote the module H1, the Village of Hommlet. It's an introduction, a novice level, where it adds an encounter on the way to the village. It does add an ambush by bandits encounter on the way to the village of Hommlet. And it also, he fills in more details of the NPC at the village, which is another source of information to really add a lot to your characters in the village. And I highly recommend this. This is really good work of him. And if you go to his Patreon, you can get copies of this. And eventually he is going to release this to the public, I believe. Both modules create a bandit encounter for the party on the way to the village of Hommlet at the beginning of the campaign. Because a lot of people believe that if you can start a game off with combat, with action, it creates excitement in the game and it lets the players actually gel, come together, and become a team, especially when it's a tough fight. And so both these modules actually have an encounter for that, which is great. And what I like about both is they have some more artwork they've never seen before, which is really nice to be able to show the players. At the beginning of my article, it's just a copy of the introduction of the module that you're supposed to read to the players. I like to keep it in here so that way I can share it with my players a little bit easier, depending if they're online or not. And I can also use it as I role play. Below that, I start off with NPCs. Okay, at the end of that, you find that the players are approaching the Inn of the Welcome Wench. So we got to talk about this preparation thing. You got to prepare for this encounter. When the players first get to the village, you got to have artwork ready to go. Show them some artwork, what the village looks like, what the Inn of the Welcome Wench looks like, and maybe some of the NPCs. When they first get there, they're probably might encounter the guards, the town's guardsmen, which is considered the Burns Badgers later on in this campaign, and they might be questioned. A reason players will be questioned in a game in a medieval village is because they don't see people like that every day. There's just a bunch of farmers and merchantmen that come through here with their caravans once in a while. And so when they see this well-equipped, well-armed, and armored band of mercenaries, cutthroats, fighters, wizards, and priest, the villagers are going to be shocked and surprised, and they're going to be excited, almost like celebrities. Even if they're all first level, they're still beyond the norm. You don't see people like that every day, depending on the campaign you're running, of course. My advice is general, will depend, because I know different campaigns are run different ways. So at the end of this introduction, it talks about them approaching the inn. So after entering the courtyard of the Inn of the Welcome Wench, they may be approached by the stable boys and stable hands. And that's what I wrote out here. So if the players have horses, I'll say that when they pass through the fenced entry yard of the inn, a young man and a younger boy steps out from the stables to the west and approaches your group. The young man steps forward with a lopsided smile and takes hold of the bridle of the closest horse, which is probably the leader of the group. Most likely a paladin or a knight or whoever has a horse, if they have a horse. "You all visiting the inn? Let me take them mounts. We'll feed and water them for you." So the young groom hands the reins to the stable boy and waits for everyone to dismount with an open hand. "That will be 1 silver piece, masters." Then at that time they might pay them, give them a few coins. So the two then lead the horses over to the stables to get some hay and water. And then I write out that the party steps up to the porch, opens the door of the inn, and then I have a description of what awaits them when they open that door. The smell of roasted venison and poached salmon wafts around you. The common room is large, bright, and cheerful, with a sizable stone fireplace burning against the northern wall. The room contains several rough-hewn tables and chairs and boards and benches. Natural tree trunk pillars support the ceiling overhead, all dark with smoke and age. The common room is sparsely populated even as the evening draws near, with about 10 patrons seated at various tables around the room. A few of the patrons look to be locals, wearing simple farmer garb and commoner clothing. The others look to be travelers, merchants, and peddlers, stopping at the inn for food and rest before continuing on their journeys. I like to have this information ready to draw from as I roleplay and describe things. It helps me stay on track. This would be better in a bullet point format like Old School Essentials does, but I wrote this like 3-4 years ago. Okay, now the first thing you need to know is who's in the inn. The inn does have a description of the owner, his wife, his kids, his staff, any of the henchmen and other NPCs here, but you don't know who's going to be present at any time, and you really should plan for that. You should make a list of who's here at any given time the players arrive, because they're going to come to this inn more than once. This is just the first time they've been here. But before that, I got something I would say to the players describing who's here. So I'd say, seated at one of the tables alone is a tall, thin man, probably in his late 20s, focused on his dinner plate that looks to be like some type of fish. There's a glass flagon filled with white wine sitting at the table as well. The man's clothing is nondescript. It consists of a simple brown traveling cloak over some tan trousers and a tunic. Seated at another table, along with a couple of locals, is a man dressed in brown leather jerkin and pants, with a black cloak slung over his shoulders. He's smiling and tossing dice at a tray, talking joyfully to two men. The silver and copper coins are piled on the table, with the two merchants stare with excitement and greed at the dice. Standing at the bar, swaying slightly, is a man wearing a dirty brown tunic and blue trousers. He holds a leather jack filled with ale and that spills out on the floor with every movement he makes. Obviously, that's Elmo. And then I finally moved to the innkeeper. Because if I don't describe who's in the inn briefly first, that's going to get interrupted if I describe the innkeeper first, because then the players will start wanting to take orders and ask for rumors right away. So I try to get this stuff out of the way first. So finally, the spotlight, as you could call it, moves to the innkeeper. So then I describe that behind the bar is a portly, bald man wearing a white apron over a blue tunic. The man is busily wiping down the bar when he notices your group enter the inn. At this point, I also have artwork to share with the players. If you don't have artwork, that's fine. We didn't do that for decades, but it's nice to have it, and I like to share it, especially if you're running this game online. This is an excellent illustration of line art of the front of the Inn of the Welcome Wench. And then I have maps from the original module. They're not very detailed, but they are clearly defined with numbers, so you can refer them to the module. But I like to share more detailed colored maps with the players, and so I look for that or I make them myself. This is an example of 3D tiles. This looks like a lot of money. What they did was they recreated the entire Inn of the Welcome Wench in some sort of 3D tile system. It looks really nice. It even has a roof, and it looks like it's layered so you can put it on top of each other. This is really going far, but it's great to see. It's really cool looking. I wouldn't want to use it at my table, but I think it's really neat. This is one of the line art illustrations from the original module, T1, The Village of Hommlet. And this is what it's supposed to look like inside the Inn of the Welcome Wench, with the bartender, the bar, and the crowd of Patreons drinking. This illustration I commissioned from an artist. I couldn't find any good artwork of the front of the Inn of the Welcome Wench, and I really needed one. I really wanted one for my campaign. And so I had him do it. His name is Hack and Slash, Patreon. He drew the front really well. It's 2 stories. It's got the front entrance with lights over it. It's got a fenced yard. On the left side is the barn where the horses go. And you can actually see that the barn stables connect to the main house proper. So obviously there's ways to get back and forth from the stable to the inn from within inside, which is interesting to see. Sometimes in your description of places and locations, players might skip or forget certain things you told them because a lot of times you'll give them so much information it could become overwhelming. And now I have a map of the inside of the Inn of the Welcome Wench. This is a prettier one created by HAB after a Dave Sutherland original. I like it. It's really nice looking. It looks rustic. It has all the locations. It's drawn correctly. The layout is exactly the same. I see in the original version there's no connection between the main house and the stables. Now there's a simple menu in the module itself, a part of the pages, and it's best, I find, to create a handout, a visual handout to the players that you can pass them, that they can actually look at, or you could put up on the screen for them so they can see it, rather than just spouting it out loud for the players to choose from. So seeing this gives them a better understanding of what they can order, and it helps speed things up because they're all looking at it at the same time, and then they can place their orders. You can still role play this, and you have a handout to go along with it. So that's the original menu, and then and this version, a low-res version, actually breaks down the food to different kinds, like steak and kidney pie. This is a really nice looking menu that you can share online, and it'll be kind of tough to print out because you have to cut around the edges. And it has the list of just the simple meals with no description of those meals. But it does go into a little bit more detail about the beer, the wine, and the brandy and liquors, where it comes from. Like they came from Ulick or Furandy or Celine or Kieland. And I think that adds a lot of flavor to the campaign. Back to my preparation article. So you have this handout of the map of the building, of the layout of the inn, and you have meal handouts, the menus. And so when the players get that, the players will have those in hand when the innkeeper starts to roleplay. "Ho! Welcome to the Inn of the Welcome Wench," the man said as he waves his arm towards the common room. "Come in! I'm Ostler Gundukut, proprietor. Whatever you need, just ask." Ostler points to the large casks behind the bar. "I have some of the finest ale and beer around. We have wines and liquor, whatever your taste is. My wife makes the best roast venison and mutton. It just falls off the bone. Why, once I had some, I couldn't even get it up to my mouth. It would just fall off the fork. I had to put the plate in my mouth and just scoop it all in. The ostler laughs loudly as he holds his belly. So, have a seat, or step up to the bar and tell me what you like. He greets each of them. Then the ostler will proceed to nod in greeting to each of them as the players introduce themselves and start to order. So I have some off-the-cuff preparation just in case it's needed. In case somebody wants to order some milk or water, I'll have some canned responses here. I have a canned response about the extensive wine cellar and all the wines he has. And then, of course, I have a preparation. Then, of course, I prepare any of the rumors that he would know of. The module has a list of rumors that you could give out. Some are true, some are not. And the other modules I referred to earlier, they have their own list of rumors too to hand out, which is really good. One of them I give to the ostler is a rumor about the bandits themselves. So I give him a lot of information about the bandits so he can share it with the players. He doesn't have a lot of direct information about the bandits, only what's happening in the area, what the village sees, because the ostler is really, he's on the seat of the council of Hommlet, and he's privy to a lot of information, and he talks to Byrne and Rufus all the time, but they do come in for beer and food, and so does the mayor. And so at that point, I'll have the serving girl. So if the party sits at the bar, we can continue role-playing there with ostler, and they can get this, and you can even give them more rumors than that. Well, that's the primary one that I'm sticking with. That's part of all the preparation. You got to know all the rumors that all the NPCs in this room would know, so you're prepared to deliver that information to the players. If you want, of course, you can just roll on the table randomly, and you could try to wing it. If you're a good improv actor, you can just wing this stuff and make it sound natural. A lot of the weak DMs over the years will just read it verbatim right from the page, and I cringe whenever I hear that. Or you can just pre-assign some of these rumors to these NPCs if you want to go into that much preparation. That I find if you do that, you can custom tailor some of this information to that specific NPC. So it kind of makes more sense sometimes, depending how far the players get into role-playing. Okay, then I have information about if they decide to take a table or not. So if they take the table, the serving girl will come up to the table to serve them. Now, the article I have for In the Welcome Wench has a lot of this artwork. So on the right is a picture of the front of the building, and to the left is an interactive map of the village of Hommlet, because some of these NPCs are from these locations, so I have to have that ready to go, so I can look it up real quick. The picture on the right of Ostler, the innkeeper, is very bad. It's from an older edition version of somebody's story of this adventure, and I don't like it. It doesn't look like him at all. He should be more heavier set. And then on the right below that are the two serving wenches, the serving girls that serve. I have one working in the daytime, and I have another working at night. And I also list how old they are and what faith they belong to. So they like the Druids. I scroll back up, and I have flavor text of what the building looks like from the outside. The first thing I write is flavor text of what it looks like on the outside of the Inn of the Welcome Wench. As they listen to me describe the place, they can be looking at the illustration I handed them and what it looks like. Then I describe about the young stable boy, that he handles the draft and riding horses, and they live in the stables as well. The innkeeper Ostler is always found bustling around the place along with his good wife and 2 daughters, a serving wench or 2, and a pair of potboy apprentices. And the customers are usually 4 to 16 in the main room at most of the time. So at any point, while you're running that first session, the players can turn to any one of them and start asking them questions. And of course, you could probably use the rumor table to roll randomly to see what they might know. But the game would be much richer and deeper and engaging if you had a little bit more information about each of these NPCs. The henchmen written at that location have developed backgrounds and stats, which is great, but most of these NPCs do not. And I'd like to provide a little bit more information, and I'll show you how I take notes on that in a bit. Then I state that the innkeeper, Gindegut, he talks freely, but he says very little. He's sharp-eyed and a good sense of judging characters. He serves all comers and will rent a room to anyone who is not causing trouble. If you look at medieval villages, one of the duties of an innkeeper at a tavern inn in a small village is to keep an eye on strangers, because the first place that strangers and merchants go to stay for the night is at a tavern. None of the locals will just take some stranger in off the road into their house to spend the night. There's no R&Bs in the medieval world. So they'll be staying at the tavern or the barn or and get a room at a stable inn. And who's going to talk to them more is the innkeeper and the serving girls. And they're going to find out, what's going on and why these people. They're going to find out why these strangers are here and what they're doing in town, if they're passing through, if they're here to stay, what their business is. And as they drink, they loosen up and they actually get more information from them. Are the ones in town that are most likely to get the most information about strangers in town. And also I read back then that the innkeeper was responsible for the safety of his customers in the village. And so if he let something go unreported, he could get blamed for it as well and get into a lot of trouble. And that's just a given law that they had back then in most villages that I read about. But it makes sense too. So of course he's the eyes and ears of the village when it comes to strangers. Also, there's the fact in later editions of this campaign that he is a member of the Council of Hommlet. So a bit more information about the ostler. He's a sergeant of the militia, and the stable boy and groom are also members. The first pot boy is an aspiring druid, and he serves as the courier of the druid of the grove, bearing messages information to him back and forth. So depending on what kind of players you have, what kind of characters they made. They might be with the druid or against the druid. You never know, because in this actual adventure, in this village, there's two sides here. There's half the village worships St. Cuthbert, and the other half revere the druids, which is Obed High. And sometimes they're at odds with each other. And it's good to know which NPC is on which side of things and what their beliefs are. Because the kind of beliefs that serve the old faith, Obed High, the druids, they believe their laws are different. What they think is important is different, and what concerns them. The people of St. Cuthbert are sometimes the same and opposite, depending how you look at it. Like the St. Cuthbert promotes law and order, and you have to obey the laws of the Viscounty no matter above all else. Nature has nothing to do with it. That's when they come into grievances with the druids. They have arguments about that subject, and they don't always agree on everything. And so sometimes the local villagers could erupt into an argument or even violence in the inn. You could actually have that as a part of the role-playing scene. You got to remember that this will not be the only time the players will be at this tavern. I've run this module where they came here like 5 or 6 times before they finished the whole thing. And so each time you should, to make it interesting, have something happen, something a little different. Add a couple more NPCs. That's another way to deliver all the NPCs to the players eventually, not all at once where it overwhelms them. Is I have the B2 module Keep on the Borderlands. I have 10 NPCs that would be willing to go with them. But I'm not going to, on session 1, they're all going to be sitting at the tavern waiting for them to be talked to or coming up to the parties and begging them to come along. That'll just be too much. It'll take too long to role play that. It'll be overwhelming. It won't work. So what I do is I pick 4 of them at a time per visit, and I curtail it. I plan that in advance. So on session 1, I know which ones I plan it. In that first description I read earlier, I described 3 NPCs right off the bat. The wizard, henchman, potential henchman. The rogue, playing dice. He's a potential henchman if the party needs a thief in the group. And then the person at the bar is a ranger, Elmo, with an axe. So that's 3 right away. And I would probably add 2 more as the night progresses. I won't have them there immediately. I'll have them join after dinner is served. I'll probably have them come into the tavern, and then I'll describe to the players who just came in. Okay, so then in the article, I have flavor text of what it looks like outside, and then what it looks like inside. And then below that, I have the menu and prices. I have a picture of the stable boy. Another picture of the welcome wench I found that is interesting to see. It's a little blurry. I got a description of the rooms. The upper rooms are very clean, and all except the common dormitory are heated. That's another thing you're going to point out when they try to book a room. When you tell them that the common room is available for really cheap, there's no heating in there. So depending on the time of year you run the campaign, it could be really cold in there. But all the other rooms actually have fireplaces. So each has a fine bed, many covers, a wash stand, a chamber pot, towels, pegs for garments, and several chairs and stools. The larger rooms have armchairs, tables, footstools, bed warmers, curtained beds, good rugs on the floor, wall hangings as well. The cost of each is shown in the key of the second floor. And that's another page I have. That's proof right there, the layout, how hard it is to find information in this campaign. So it's telling me right here that that there's information I need to know, but it's telling me I have to look at a different page or a different location to get that information. And that's really bad layout design when you're trying to run the game at the fingertips. When you're trying to run the game, when you're trying to run an engaged game with great pace and timing, you can't have information like that scattered all over the place where you're trying to find it again. So you either got to take notes and add all these notes to one page or add all these notes to one location each time. So that way, when you go to that location, everything you need to know about that information is right there. From the politics to the organizations they belong to any kind of quests that are going on or knowledge of the bandits in the area. So continuing further along, I have a list of all the people all the family members and the workers that work here at the inn and stay here. We got the wife, Gloria. They have a 13-year-old female child, a 10-year-old female child, the ostler's daughters. So he has a wife and 2 daughters. And then you got 2 serving girls, Riley and Aspie. And then you have the groom, the stable boy, and a pot boy and another pot boy. So the 2 pot boys want to become a druid and a thief someday, but they're only 10 and 11 years old. I listed the potential henchmen of the module. You got Turuku and Colbert. They're a strange pair. One's a fighter, one's a monk. You have Spignus, which is a mage, who I described earlier in the room. You have Furnock, which is a Karn artist, a cheat, and a dice gambler, small-time jewel thief. He's a henchman that the players can get if they're missing a rogue. And then you got Zert. He's a fighter, but he's actually an agent of the Temple of Elemental Evil. And then, of course, I added more maps. Now, the maps on the right are more detailed maps that I use when I'm running this game online, like Fantasy Grounds, because I can add lighting, line of sight, and fog of war. So when they go upstairs, like in this picture right here, you'll see that it's much more detailed. So if I have a character booking 2 different rooms here, so let's say I have them book this room and this room, and one or two players stay in the common room in the top left-hand corner. I know what windows are in there and what fireplaces are there. I see that this map didn't account for the initial description of this inn, that the common room does have a fireplace and that the individual rooms do not. So it's opposite of what the module said. But the map is beautiful, especially when you zoom in. It's highly detailed. You can zoom in really far to see what's even on the desk there. And what's great is the doors and the windows too. So I know where all the windows are, also reflecting where it's located outside, because things can happen outdoors. So the reason I want so much detail is just in case. If the players, when the players finally choose their rooms and they go to bed for the night, I ask them all how do they stow all their equipment, what they're doing with their armor. Are they going to wear it while they're sleeping? Are they going to strip it off? Where are they going to put it? Are they going to put it under the bed? Are they going to put it in the chest provided? The chest does not have a lock. The doors do not have locks. And the windows are just wooden shutters. So what are they going to do? I need to know exactly how to prepare themselves before they go to sleep at night. And you want to be consistent with that. Even though nothing's going to happen, you still want to ask those questions, because you'll tip those players off if all of a sudden you just ask those questions out of the blue. And then that'll kind of ruin things, the suspense, the excitement of what might happen. And things that could happen. Zert is a spy for the Temple of Elemental Evil. That's a good example. The thief might not be recruited by the players. Maybe he sees them getting a little bit rich and he wants some of that to loot. That's another good example to sneak in and steal some of that stuff. There's also making enemies with the bandits and that horror organization. They're coming after them. As some of you know, I'm a big fan of maps, and I like to share them not as a battle board, but as a visual aid. And I'll share like the I'll find maps. I'll find maps that have anything to do with the locations or the module. And this is one I just found that's beautiful. It's a church of the St. Cuthbert, upper and lower floor. When the party's there to visit Canon Turgeon, to follow up on the rumors given to them by Gundagut, they will be greeted at the door by one of his underlings, his apprentice, his servant, and he will at that time address the players and ask them what they want, what business they have here. And then once they satisfy him with role-playing, he'll lead them up through the church onto the second floor where the master's study is, Canon Turgeon's study, where he will talk to them there. And then that's a whole entire another role-playing scene talking about the rumors that he knows. He's going to share information about Black Jay, what he's heard, and also with the brewmaster to talk to them more about the banditry activities in the area. When you first start this game, the players don't know anything about the moat house or where it's located at. They're going to have to find out that information from talking to NPCs. And all these rumors given by these different NPCs are designed for the players to find the moat house. So any one of these NPCs could tell them where the moat house is located if they were motivated enough, if they thought that was important, if they knew why the players are here and what their interests are, and that their intentions are to go seek out these bandits, and maybe they're holed up at the moat house, but nobody knows for certain. Actually, in this encounter with Canon Turgeon, during the conversation, he could actually bring that up and say, you know what, they might be hiding out at the old moat house. And at that time, he could actually give the players a map of where the old moat house is located at. And this could happen even before or after they follow up with rumors about the brewmeister. They'll go to this location here, talk to him, engage him, get his rumors, find out that his barrels have been stolen from a caravan raid, that they are all marked with special markings and numbers, and he'll actually give the players numbers if they ask for them, serial numbers of each cask. Once they get that information from him, trying to connect the dots of what these bandits are up to, maybe they go back to the Church of St. Cuthbert, talk to Canon Turgeon, and then he puts two and two together and thinks, hey, maybe they're at the moat house. Maybe you should investigate there, and he'll give them a map. Also, during the role-playing, any of these important NPCs in the village might know where the moat house is. You know that Bern and Rufus does. You know the captain of the militia does. Gundagut does. You know the captain of the militia, Gundagut, the druid, the elder of the village. They'd all know the location of the moat house. Part of the preparation of running the game is preparing the module and is reading it. And here I'm showing you the T1 through 4 Temple of Elemental Evil adventure, which has the T1 module in it. So we're going to scroll down to page 5. Notes for the Dungeon Master. A couple of these paragraphs I quoted earlier, but let's continue for a few of the things I'd like to point out. As you notice, this is quite lengthy. There's a lot of information here for the new DM to consider. And this is one of the things I was talking about earlier, how older modules taught the DM how to DM. So other things I'd like to point out, the way he said here is, only some of the villagers are named. Please name the others to suit your campaign. Most of the local folk are the old faith, Druidic, and so you must consider the Druid's Grove to be their spiritual caretaker. Many of the inhabitants are 0 level types, 1 hit dice, if there's combat. The floor plans of most of the buildings are not given, so you should design them in areas where you expect action to occur. Change the map of Hommlet as the game progresses. Note any places destroyed, and add new ones for persons who've moved to new places. If a general battle seems likely, you can still list the village militia and fight it out on the tabletop. In short, the scenario has been left as open as possible for your own taste and development. Have fun. Yeah, it is. But it's not for 100% improv. You still got to prepare. You have to be prepared to succeed. And so he's saying at the beginning of this, prepare. And then later he says, wing it. So you still got to prepare first. You have to get this all ready to go. And taking notes goes a long way. As a final note, remember that the NPCs are agents of various powers that send a continuous stream of information to their superiors. All will be cautious in their actions and are unlikely to be duped or maneuvered. If they participate in adventures or they are imprisoned or badly treated, their masters will soon be very unhappy if bad news is received. The concerned parties will absolutely seek to redress matters according to their alignments, personalities, and ultimate goals. There are wheels within wheels in the village of Hommlet and the lands around, Behind each person lurks another, the circle growing ever wider, and the figures are shadowy and very powerful. So what they're saying is they're referring to some of the henchmen, then like Zert, and also leaders of the temple itself, including Larth the Beautiful. You got to be prepared for them to react in this way, to fight back, to send messages, to send reinforcements. All that has to be prepared in advance before each session. Then the module continues on information on how to further this adventure into other adventures. As you can see, the article is quite big. So there's a lot of information here. They expect the DM to do all the preparation. Let's recap. The idea here is to prepare for each session in advance. So the first session, session 1, you expect the players to get to the village, stay at the inn, get rumors, follow up on other rumors and NPCs in town, and then find the moat house and travel and get there. That's all that's going to happen on session 1. Session 2, they're going to be in the moat house, and they're going to be dealing with those NPCs and the information that they have, because they're going to capture them, and they're going to question them, and they're going to find out more information, including those prisoners they're holding. They get a lot of information that way. And what's going to happen when the players leave and come back again? How are these bad guys going to react? So you have to have all contingencies prepared in advance, so that way you can run this smoothly, at least for the first session, at least for the next session coming up. Now, this can go down a long rabbit hole, this adventure. This whole campaign arc is the longest and greatest campaign set of modules ever written for D&D. It's huge. It can continue from it can start from the T1 and continue all the way to the T1 through 4 through the Temple of Elemental Evil, with a whole bunch of side quests and adventures in between. And then past that through the G series and the D series, all the way to the Q1 module, Loth, the Queen of Spiders, which will make a campaign last for years and get the players up to well above 18th level. So in my opinion, I consider that an epic campaign. And I've been trying to run something like that for years for one group or another, just to see how far they get. And every time I run it a little bit better, because I prepare even more each time. I build upon my work, and I save it, and I use it again for the next time. And I build it, and I'll write more, I'll add more NPCs, I'll add more storylines, more dialogue, more maps, more artwork, and every time it becomes better and better. So I hope you like everything I had to say about preparation for the T1 module, Village of Hommlet. If you have any questions or suggestions, please don't hesitate to post them down below. I would like to see what others think about this module and how to prepare for it. There's a lot of material out there to be found on the internet. All you gotta do is search the forums and you will find it to help you prepare and get this information. Also, if you'd like to support my channel, encourage me to do more videos, please visit my Patreon, sign up there. Every donation there will encourage me to make more videos. So let's wrap it up. Thank you for your time. Have fun running the Temple of Elemental Evil, and good luck to your players.